Chapter 10 Milady de Winter D'Artagnan remained at his post until the ball was over at 4 o'clock in the morning. When his company was dismissed in the square outside the palace, D'Artagnan hurried to meet Constance. Earlier, when he had given her the diamonds, she had promised to meet him after the ball. He was no more than 10 paces into a side street when he spied a carriage ahead of him. A beautiful blonde young woman was leaning out the window, fighting off an attacker who seemed to be pulling her out. "Villain!" cried D'Artagnan, as he rushed towards the carriage with his sword drawn. The woman looked up at the young cadet and whispered to her attacker, "Run, quickly! You've played your part well." The man jumped down from the step of the carriage, and headed into a dark alley. D'Artagnan chased him, but the man had disappeared. He returned breathlessly to the carriage. "Are you hurt, madame?" he asked, gazing at the woman's exquisite beauty.
"No, monsieur," said Milady de Winter, "but I thank you for coming to my rescue. You are a brave young man, and I am most grateful. How may I reward you?"
"I am rewarded by seeing that you are safe," said D'Artagnan, who could not tear his eyes away from the woman's face.
"Then you must call on me tomorrow, so that I might thank you again," she said. "Here is my name and my address."
D'Artagnan took the paper with trembling hands. "Thank you, milady," he stammered. "I would be honored to call." With that the coachman whipped the horses, and the carriage sped off into the darkness.
"This will be so easy," muttered Milady, with a smile. "It'll be child's play."
"I am the happiest of men!" shouted D'Artagnan as he ran through the streets. "My heart is bursting with love, not once, but twice!" When he arrived back at his apartment, Constance was not there. D'Artagnan paced the floors for hours, watching the sun rise over Paris. When he could stand it no more, he decided to talk to Athos. Surely the Musketeer knew everything when it came to women. "Never trust woman, any woman!" exclaimed Athos when D'Artagnan finished telling him of Constance's broken promise. "But she seemed to love me so dearly," said D'Artagnan, "and I love her. How could she have used me for this mission and then just leave me? Have you ever loved, Athos?" "Love! Pah!" cried Athos. "Let me tell you a story of what love did to someone, to one of my friends. Not me, of course. He was a nobleman, one of the counts of my province, a rich, kind-hearted, handsome nobleman who could have married any woman he chose. But he fell in love with a girl of 16, as blonde and as beautiful as any woman he had ever seen. My friend knew nothing about her, only that she had come to live in the province with her brother, a priest. My friend was an honorable man, and although he could have taken her as his mistress, he chose, instead, to marry her. He gave her his name, his wealth, and his love. But he was a fool and an idiot." "But why, if he loved her?" asked D'Artagnan. "Because one day, shortly after they were married, he discovered a horrible secret about her. She had fallen from her horse while they were riding. Her sleeve slipped from the neck of her dress and bared her shoulder. And there he discovered a brand. The brand of the fleur-de-lis. The brand of a thief who has stolen sacred treasures from the church." "And what did the count do?" "The only thing he could do. The law stated that such a crime had to be punished by death. So he hung her from a tree." Athos buried his face in his hands and sobbed. "That cured me of beautiful, blonde, loving women," he added, forgetting to end his story by referring to the count. "Then she is dead?" asked D'Artagnan. "I imagine so," said Athos, as he uncorked a bottle of wine and poured 2 drinks. "And her brother, the priest?" "I went after him the next day, but he had disappeared," replied Athos, sighing. The two friends proceeded to empty that bottle of wine, then 3 or 4 more. As evening approached, D'Artagnan realized that he was expected at Milady de Winter's home at 8. He told Athos of his meeting with her the night before, but Athos seemed surprised. "Isn't this the woman that you believe to be a spy for the cardinal?" "Yes, my friend," said D'Artagnan, "yet I still feel this great attraction to her." "Ah, D'Artagnan, you have just told me how you lost the one you love, and now you are running after this Milady de Winter without any thought of your dear Constance. Well, enjoy yourself, my friend, but beware of a trap at all times." And so began D'Artagnan's visits to the beautiful Milady de Winter. Day after day he called upon her, falling more and more in love with her at each visit, and thinking less and less of the original suspicions he had left about her. After a month had gone by, D'Artagnan called one day and was surprised to learn that Milady wasn't in. Her maid, a pretty young girl named Kitty, led D'Artagnan into the house just the same.
"Monsieur," she said, I must speak to you in private.
Of course. What is it, Kitty?
You love my mistress very much, don't you, sir?
She asked fearfully. Oh, more than I can tell you.
That is a great pity, sir, for my mistress does not love you at all. She is using you for her own purposes.
D'Artagnan was shocked. Why are you telling me all this? He demanded.
Because, monsieur, in love it is every woman for herself,
She admitted boldly. Then D'Artagnan remembered the loving glances Kitty had given him each time he entered the house. If what she said about Milady was true, then Kitty just might be useful to him. He reached out to embrace her. Just then they heard the front door slam.
Good heavens! cried Kitty. My mistress has returned. You must leave quickly.
D'Artagnan picked up his hat as if to go, but seeing that Kitty had already left the room, he hid himself in the maid's closet.
I'm coming, milady,
he heard her call. The two women went into Milady's bedroom, but the door had been left open. He could hear them talking.
Well, Kitty,
said Milady,
has my young Gascon called to me this evening? No, madame,
lied the maid.
Can the young man have found another love? Hardly, my dear, said Milady. He is too much in love with me. I have a good enough hold on him. But I thought that Milady loved him. Love him? I detest him. He is an idiot. He made me fail in my mission for the cardinal. But I shall have my revenge on him.
D'Artagnan shuddered to hear the woman he loved speak of him in this way.
I have been planning my revenge against him for several weeks now, continued Milady. But Madame already has had her revenge against the woman he was in love with, said Kitty. Oh, that Bonacieux woman! He has forgotten that she ever existed. I saw to that. With the help of Count Rochefort, I have taken care of her.
A cold sweat broke out on D'Artagnan's brow. This woman was a monster. He had to find out what she had done with Constance. He rushed from the closet and burst into Milady's room. "You have betrayed me, you miserable woman!" he cried. Milady turned pale, and backed away from him. She reached inside her dress and pulled out a knife. Her face twisted with rage, she sprang at D'Artagnan. He quickly grabbed her wrist and forced the knife from her clenched hand. She fell to her knees, and D'Artagnan's hands tightened around her throat. "Where is Constance Bonacieux?" he cried. "Tell me where she is, or I shall squeeze the life out of you." Milady pulled violently at the heavy brooch pinned to her dress. Once it was free, she dug its point into D'Artagnan's face, just below his eye. D'Artagnan loosened his hold on her throat for an instant, and grabbed the brooch out of her hand. But in that instant she broke free and rushed to the table for another dagger. As she came at him in a fury, D'Artagnan drew his sword and backed towards the door. She lunged with the dagger, and D'Artagnan's sword caught the sleeve of her dress, splitting it in two at the top. To his great astonishment, that lovely white shoulder bore the brand of the fleur-de-lis, the brand of the public executioner. "Good God!" cried D'Artagnan, frozen in his tracks at the door.
"Villain!" cried Milady. "You now know my terrible secret, but you shall never live to reveal it."
As she raised the dagger above his heart, D'Artagnan recovered his senses. He turned and fled out the door, bolting it after him. He raced down the stairs and out into the street with Milady's screams following him. He didn't stop running until he burst into Athos's front door. "Something terrible has happened to me!" he cried breathlessly. "Does it have something to do with that brooch you were clutching in your hand?" asked Athos. D'Artagnan looked down. He hadn't realized that the brooch he had grabbed from Milady was still clutched in his fist. He nodded. "Let me look at it," said Athos, taking it from D'Artagnan. He turned the brooch over in his hand and examined it carefully. Suddenly he turned pale. "It is difficult to believe that there could be two like this in the whole world," he whispered. "Do you recognize it?" asked D'Artagnan. "Yes, it was in my family for generations before I gave it to her, to my wife. But tell me, how did you get the brooch?" D'Artagnan explained all that had happened in Milady's apartment. When he came to the part where he had discovered the fleur-de-lis on her shoulder, Athos groaned and turned pale. His head fell between his hands. "This woman, this Milady, is she blonde?" "Yes," replied D'Artagnan. "Are her eyes the lightest blue?" "Yes." "Is she tall and well built?" "Yes." "And the fleur-de-lis, is it small and red?" "Yes." "Yet you say she is English." "They call her Milady, an English name, but she could be French. She speaks perfectly, with no trace of a foreign accent." "Then the worst of my fears has come true," cried Athos. "Oh, God! I had hoped that she was dead, but she's returned to haunt me. You mean that woman, uh, the one in your province, the one who was branded? Yes, D'Artagnan, that woman and Milady de Winter are the same. She is my wife, and now that you know her secret, she will never let you live. You must leave France. You must get away immediately. But what about you, Athos? I shall be safe enough. She doesn't know that Athos exists. She doesn't know that the Count de la Fere became the Musketeer, Athos. But she does know about you, and she will be after you. My company leaves for La Rochelle tomorrow to fight the Huguenots, said D'Artagnan. That should keep me far enough away from her for a while. You can never be far enough away from that woman, my boy. Take my warning.